Boeing engineers are masterminds behind some of the most advanced aircraft technology in the world. However, despite their expertise, many of them refuse to fly on the company's planes. But the main question remains why? For decades, the Boeing 737 has been a reliable and popular aircraft for the aviation industry, and Boeing developed several variants of the 737 over the years, such as the original, the classics, and the NGs, which have all proven to be a great option for airliners worldwide. Quickly, the 737 became the best-selling commercial jetliner of all time, with over 10,000 delivered worldwide. As we know, the aviation industry constantly evolves. The competitors are always pushing each other to improve. This was the case with Boeing as well. Boeing has been planning on developing a new aircraft for quite some time, and when Airbus announced their A320neo aircraft, a redesigned and more efficient version of their popular A320, that put pressure on Boeing to do something similar with the 737. In addition to this, more pressure was being put on Boeing when American Airlines, a longtime Boeing customer, was in negotiation with Airbus to purchase their new aircraft. Determined to keep their longtime customer happy, Boeing needed to make a decision, and they needed to do it fast. So, to get ahead of it, Boeing pushed aside their plans for a new design and decided to re-engine the 737 to create a new generation of aircraft. And with that, the 737 MAX was born, with larger engines and a new maneuvering control augmentation system. The 737 MAX promised improved performance and reliability. Boeing was smart for doing this, as they used a certified airframe, which meant that the aircraft wouldn't have to undergo the same lengthy certification process as it would for new aircraft, meaning that it would be faster for Boeing to get the 737 MAX onto the market. One of the additions of this aircraft was the larger engines, which caused the aircraft to fly better than the 737 NG. Boeing also designed automated software called Maneuvering Control Augmentation System, MCAS, which would automatically activate to stabilize the pitch. By 2016, the 737 MAX completed its flight tests, performing without any incidents, and the following year the MAX gained certification by the FAA. In 2017, the first delivery of the MAX aircraft was made to the Indonesian carrier Lion Air, but this is where the problems began to rise. A year after the first delivery of the 737 MAX, things were looking good, with over 130 MAX aircraft in service with 28 different airlines worldwide. A few months later, Lion Air Flight 610 took off from Jakarta on a routine flight to Pangkal, Penang. As soon as the plane took off, it was clear that there were issues with the aircraft, which later caused the plane to crash into the Java Sea. Fast forward to 2019. Ethiopian Airlines Flight ET302 faced the same fate as Lion Air Flight 610 when the plane crashed minutes after takeoff from Addis Ababa to Nairobi. Within 1 minute after takeoff, the pilots reported a flight control issue, and when the MCAS was activated, the pilots struggled to control the aircraft, resulting in a fatal crash where the plane slammed into the ground at 700 miles per hour. Both of these incidents had one thing in common, and that was the plane, which was the Boeing 737 MAX. The investigation into the 737 MAX began after both of these devastating crashes. It later emerged that both incidents were triggered by design flaws, in particular, the use of flight control software known as MCAS. This system was designed to adjust the aircraft's angle in certain situations, and it relied on data from a single sensor to operate. In the case of Flight 610, the sensor was found to be faulty, causing the MCAS system to repeatedly push the plane's nose down despite the pilot's attempts to correct it. In 2019, history repeated itself when a faulty sensor was also the cause of the crash of Flight ET302. In both cases, this faulty sensor forced the aircraft into a catastrophic dive the pilots could not prevent. Further investigations revealed that Boeing didn't include information about the MCAS system in pilot manuals or training guidance and had deliberately sought to downplay the impact of the system in its communications with the FAA. This system was cited as the contributing cause of both crashes. All across the world, most of the 737 MAX aircraft were suspended from flying until the problem was resolved. After the second crash and grounding of the aircraft, Boeing said they were working on fixing the software. However, this resulted in numerous lawsuits against Boeing and the FAA for failing to catch this fatal flaw. It's safe to say that these two incidents were unusual for Boeing, The company has been producing aircraft for over a century, and they rarely ever face such huge issues. But the question remains, why would these issues be there in the first place? Boeing has been producing thousands of aircraft for decades, so it's no news that they'd have a few small issues here and there. And if this were the case for the 737 MAX, it would be completely understandable. But could this mistake be simply bad luck for Boeing? Is this what caused these two planes to crash? Well, as we understand it, the major issues that caused this were deep-rooted negligence and ignorance that has been growing within the company for decades. And the 737 MAX wasn't the first example of this. Focusing on always having the newest aircraft model in the market made Boeing develop the 737 MAX in the first place. This choice was made solely because Airbus was about to release an aircraft that may cause Boeing to lose market share. One of the earliest signs of negligence in Boeing was an incident in 1987 when a Pan Am flight from London to New York experienced a loss of pressure inside the cabin. This problem happened each time the aircraft reached an altitude higher than 15,000 feet. When the cabin began depressurizing the second time the pilots reached the higher altitude, the pilots decided not to risk it and returned to London. There, the plane was examined, and it was confirmed that the issue was the cargo door locking arms, which weren't working as they were supposed to and had potentially been damaged. However, even though this incident was blamed on the ground crew, 2 years later in 1989, United Airlines were flying a Boeing aircraft, and upon reaching an altitude of 20,000 feet, everyone on board heard a loud bang, which was the cargo door completely opening with a force that ripped open the entire aircraft. After the investigation, it became evident that the reason for this incident was faulty engineering of the cargo door, which could have been fixed if Boeing had taken the 1987 incident more seriously. Looking back at the many incidents involving Boeing aircraft, one would believe that they do everything in their power to stop them from happening. It's been decades since the first incidents occurred, and many didn't expect to see such mistakes happen in recent years. And yet, we have two identical incidents happening only 5 months apart. In the aftermath of the two most recent and catastrophic incidents, the then CEO of Boeing, Dennis Muhlenberg, testified before U.S. Senate and House committees in October 2019, where he admitted this happened on his watch, saying he and the company were accountable. Since then, he has stepped down from the role of CEO. Boeing paid a $2.5 billion settlement resolving a Department of Justice charge that the company had conspired to defraud the FAA's Aircraft Evaluation Group. Following the incidents, Boeing grounded the 737 MAX planes and put them through further examination to figure out a way to fix the mistakes. It's been a few years since then, and the 737 MAX aircraft are back in service. Boeing introduced the 737 MAX 10 aircraft, but is this enough to make people around the world feel safe to fly on a Boeing? Well, it appears as though even the Boeing engineers aren't so certain of the safety of the aircraft. Over the years, Boeing engineers have poured their time and sweat into making some innovative and new aircraft that will change how we travel. However, these incidents aren't entirely their fault. It's really much bigger than that, and in the end, their doubt has made them second-guess whether or not they should board a Boeing aircraft again. With the flaws that have been witnessed on some Boeing aircraft, it became clear that this was a much bigger issue for Boeing than they'd expected. The latest two incidents were triggered by design flaws in its flight control software, which made passengers reluctant about whether or not the planes were safe. Furthermore, there have been talks that Boeing may even be sold for the greater good. A new owner may be what Boeing needs to continue making fantastic and powerful new airplanes. But will this solve everything? Surely Boeing can take the time and fix the mistakes that have already been made, and it could be beneficial for the future of the aircraft manufacturer. This could make Boeing an even more powerful aircraft manufacturer than it already is. But for now, we still won't know whether or not it will be sold, or if Boeing will continue working on their flaws and eventually come back on top as the greatest aircraft manufacturer in the world. Bye for now.